So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. My name is Ethel Sennhauser. I'm the Director for the Agriculture Global Practice here in the bank, and I want to welcome you all to this, we call them breakfasts in Washington, but it can be cocktails everywhere else in the world, and our Food for All series. That is a very interesting series that we have partnering with the Dutch government and our Dutch colleagues, looking at every aspect of agriculture related to climate change, related to food security, food safety, and agriculture innovation. The topic that brings us today is to see and to discuss what seed companies can do to promote a much more diverse nutrition, particularly through promoting vegetable growing in small farmers. And I hope you find this extremely interesting. I was reading for the preparation for today, and I found, oh, this is so cool. You know, we should probably try to see how we can encourage this. And we know it's a challenge. It's not easy sometimes to promote changes in what farmers need to adopt and need to plant. There are many challenges that they face, particularly if they are small, from inputs, from technology, from training, from finance, every aspect that we can imagine. But this has happened in many places of the world, and today we have the opportunity to have with us two experts that are going to share with us what they have done to make this work in several parts of the world. So I don't want to make my speech long because they are the ones who know more. But let me start by introducing to you to Marianne Sayok. She's connected from the Philippines, and she's the general manager of East West Seed. And also to Ido Verhagen, is that how we say it? Verhagen. I'm never going to get the Dutch names right. I'm sorry. Verhagen. Ido, okay. And he's the Executive Director of Access to Seeds Indexed, and they will talk to both of us. I will read a little bit about each of them so we know whom we have in front of us, and then I will pass the word to them so that they can make a short presentation, and then we will just do an interaction of questions and answers as we normally do. So I think that Mary, you're going to go first. Is that right? Given that you are further away, are you connected? I hope she is.
She was.
Yeah, I am. Actually, Ido will go first.
Oh, Ido will go first. Okay.
Yeah.
So they have a joint presentation, and Ido is the Executive Director, as I said, of Access to Seeds Index. And this is an initiative that is funded by the Melinda and Gates Foundation and also by the government of the Netherlands. And what they are trying to do with this index is to measure and compare what seed companies do to improve the access of quality seeds for small farmers. Prior to starting the Access to Seeds Index, Ido has been active as a boardroom consultant, assisting companies, big companies like KLM, Heineken, Philips, and TNT on all aspects of sustainability. So I don't want to go, make further. Thank you very much for being with us. I think you are in the Netherlands, if I'm correct. So we will pass the microphone to you, and please take it from here, and then we'll start with Marianne. Marianne, I will introduce you before you start speaking. The floor is yours, Ido.
Okay, thank you so much, Ethel, and thank you for the invitation. And it's a very important topic has the attention of the World Bank. And one of the drivers behind the Access to Seeds Index is to investigate how the private sector can contribute to achieving global goals such as nutrition security. And I want to share with you some insights of our research related to the vegetable seed industry. And when you look at this map, you see that malnutrition as a result of micronutrient and vitamin deficiencies is widespread in Africa and Asia. And well, the smartest way to tackle this is to help farmers in these regions to grow more and more nutritious foods. And if you talk about nutritious food, you talk about vegetables. And we all know that the agricultural landscape in these regions.
Go to telepresence system.
Please ask everyone that is connected to mute your phones.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So we know that the agricultural landscape in these regions is dominated by small farms. And we also know from studies that a lot can be achieved by improving agricultural practices. This doesn't need to be too fancy. Irrigation, seed beds, planting seedlings. When small farmers use the seeds that they normally use and they use improved agricultural practices, they can double the yields. But these experiments also show that when they use the quality seeds that are brought to them by companies, they can sometimes even grow their yields 5 times. So we were interested to investigate what seed companies are doing to make their seeds available in these regions. So if you go to the next slide. We have evaluated the efforts of the global seed companies to make quality seeds available for small farmers, which in the end results in a ranking. And the total score of a company is the sum of how companies score on specific areas, such as R&D, marketing, and capacity building. And each color corresponds to such an area. And we see an increasing interest in seeds in the seed industry, but it is almost always about field crops, maize and wheat. And the Extra Seeds Index is one of the few initiatives that also focuses on the vegetables. And we do this vegetables for nutrition, but also because vegetables are a great opportunity for smallholder farmers to, with their small plots, to build a profitable business. So for smallholders, nutrition and profitability go hand in hand when they are active in vegetables. What you see on the right is the 2016 ranking of global vegetable seed companies, and it's topped by East West Seed. And this may come as no surprise because it is the only global operating seed company that is really specialized in working for smallholder farmers. But it's still a very interesting example for the rest of the seed industry because it also shows that it's possible to build a business model that works for both company as well as for seeds, as well as for smallholder farmers. And for many of the other companies, the seed smallholder market is still relatively new, and they are still exploring it. But the good news is that they are all looking into it, so they are taking it seriously. We move to the next slide. Well, the first thing, what you want to know is whether the seed industry is active in these regions where smallholders are active. And in contrary to what's often said and thought, they are. If you look at Latin America, East Africa, and South Asia, there are many global seed companies present there, so that's a good start. There is an exception of West Africa. Not many global operating seed companies are active in that region. If there are any seed companies active there, it's vegetable seed companies. And companies tell us that this has a lot to do with the enabling environment. Our seed laws and regulations. Countries are working on regional harmonization, but often lacks implementation. So when I want to talk about barriers, there's one, especially in this case related to IP protection. If we move to the next slide. Not only the global seed companies that we have looked at, there's also a whole regional landscape of regional operating seed companies, equally important. We did this in Eastern Africa. And what we found very interesting is that the top 5 includes 4 companies that are coming from the region. And they outperform the bigger multinationals in our ranking because they just go one step further on very important topics as working for women farmers, breeding for local crops, or reaching remote villages. So the important message here is that regional companies should not be overlooked as a partner to reach smallholder farmers. And this also becomes apparent when you look at the portfolios on the right. The blue dots are the crops or the seeds that are brought to the region by global companies, and the yellow dots are the number of regional companies. And so you see that the regional companies complete the available vegetable seed portfolio. So they bring a large diversity of crops to the region. Next slide. For each company, we have scorecards, which shows on the left their individual strength, in the middle their portfolio, and on the right their presence. And when you look at the portfolio, I show this example of East African seed, a company based in It's quite typical for many of the regional companies. They have a broad portfolio. They work on field crops, vegetables, and also on local crops. But most of the time, they don't have their own breeding programs in vegetables. So they source their varieties from global companies or from public research institutes such as the World Vegetable Center. So when it comes to bringing new varieties to the region, the source of those varieties are global companies and public research institutes. Next slide. And I want to share with you some examples of how companies are operating, and I follow the pathway of breeding, distribution, and adoption. Breeding are lengthy processes. It often takes 10 years before you have a new variety that you can bring to the market. But there's also a fast track. There are huge numbers of varieties already available on the shelves of seed companies, seed banks, and public research institutes that just require testing, such as you see on the left, Sakata is doing, Japanese company is doing in Senegal. So within a few seasons of testing, new varieties can brought to the market. But we also see some companies active in breeding, like Farm in Tanzania, and they have just brought their first variety to the market, which took about 10 years to develop. One big barrier here is that seed companies have difficulties to find local breeders and local agronomists. So there's a huge challenge for education to get more, to educate more local breeders to connect those companies to the small farmers. And also some companies have told us that they've put off plans to develop new breeding stations because they just can't find the right staff. Next slide. In distribution, well, of course, the smallholder market requires tailored packaging. A practice that you see a lot on the left is that retailers have to repackage the seed, which has immediate effect on the quality, but also creates opportunities for counterfeit. And companies can tackle it by using small packages, and that also creates the opportunity to provide infographics for illiterate clients. And some companies are already doing this. There's also a challenge because farmers like those cans, and retailers like those cans because they can use it for other purposes. So it's not always easy. Next slide. And adoption, well, farmers like to see what they get. And sometimes companies organize their own field days to which they invite farmers to see how crops grow and if it works for their environment. And sometimes they use demonstration or lead farmers, as you see on the left. And those lead farmers show in their villages to their neighbors which seeds they use and how they grow. And that's just a great way for farmers to see what they can do. Some companies also go a step further by providing extension services, such as you see on the right, East-West Seeds in Mali. And well, providing these services would normally be a role for governments, but reach and quality of public extension services is not always up to standards. So that's why companies step in. And it's of course great that companies are doing this, but it's obvious that they cannot reach millions of smallholder farmers. So governments should step up their efforts here, and either by professionalizing their services or by subsidizing the services of others. Next slide. Well, when you visit those demonstration plots or field days and you talk to farmers, their selection criteria always relate to profitability: yield, days to harvest, local suitability, resistance, shelf life, and market acceptability. Nutrition is not part of the decision process, which indicates probably that it's also not something that consumers ask for, which immediately has effect on seed companies. They tell us they can do more on improving nutritional value, but it requires a demand. So there's also, we can do a lot of work on the supply side, but there's also some work to do on the demand side. Next slide. Yeah, to sum up, there are a lot of opportunities. Like I said, with vegetables, profitability and nutrition go hand in hand. there are already many varieties available in seed banks and research institutes that require testing, so you can bring it to the market in a few seasons. And we see a rise of tailored business models from seed companies for smallholder farmers. There are also barriers. Nutritional value currently plays a limited role in the choices that farmers and consumers make, and thus it plays a limited role in breeding programs of seed companies. National seed law, regional harmonization, lack of implementation, so enabling environment is an issue. And the lack of local breeders and agronomists to connect companies to farmers is also an issue. So there's a challenge for education. And this was for my part, and now I move to Marianne.
Thank you very much, Ido. This was very, very interesting. Mary is the general manager of East West Seed in the Philippines. We have heard a lot about East West in the previous presentation and how well the company ranks in the index that was just described. And this company works in research, production, distribution of vegetable seeds, primarily in Asia, but also in Latin America and starting to work in Africa too. Before joining the company, Mary used to work in government, and she was the regional director of the Department of Agriculture and the executive director of the Agriculture Training Institute. And she is currently the president of the Philippine Seed Industry Association. She knows a lot about seeds and a lot about vegetables, and I hope we can get from her really how to make this. I'm very curious, Mary, I'm sure you're going to address this, but how do you make it work, and how do you make this profitable from a private sector point of view? Going to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ethel, for the kind introduction. Let me start by giving a brief introduction about East West Seed. We introduced market-oriented plant breeding in Southeast Asia in 1982 with the main focus on developing improved vegetable varieties that are adapted to local markets and growing conditions. We have 35 years of experience in the vegetable seed business, and we are one of the 10 largest vegetable seed companies in the world. Now, in the next slide, we will see that East West Seed holds a leading market position in the most important Southeast Asian markets. So we have expanded our business activities in India, China, well, you have mentioned already Latin America and Africa. Now, next slide, please. Now, East West Seed's 35 years of experience in the vegetable seed business tell us that profitable farming cannot be achieved with having quality seeds alone. Good agronomic practices have to be in place to realize the optimum potential of improved varieties. Hence, East West Seed is actively engaged in knowledge transfer activities to lay down the foundation for market development. As Ido mentioned, our business model is centered on smallholders. And these smallholder farmers, vegetable farmers, till the area of less than 1 hectare of land. And we promote technical rather than product info. We change farming practices to more profitable, sustainable techniques, and we create foundations for future sales. So in 2016, we have trained 46,782 smallholder farmers on vegetable farming. Next slide, please. Now, the challenges facing the vegetable industry are many. Farmers work in a harsh environment characterized by hot, humid climate, heavy rains, and climate change and extreme weather disturbances like typhoons, El Nino and La Nina make farming more challenging. This kind of environment results to high pest and disease pressure. Farmers lack access to technology, basic infrastructure like farm-to-market roads, post-harvest facilities, and other challenges include high cost of production inputs, diverse growing conditions and farming systems, inefficient supply chain, and highly variable consumer preferences. Next slide, please. But there are also bright prospects of the vegetable industry. The major market drivers are enlightened consumers who have increasing health and food safety consciousness, who would buy vegetables produced according to good agricultural practices and natural farming systems. Modern food retailing, like supermarket chain, will influence the market for vegetables. But what does this mean for smallholder vegetable farmers? To enjoy the economic benefits of vegetable farming, farmers must produce what the market wants in terms of quality, variety, and food safety. Government and the private sector can help improve smallholder skills through training, for example, on good agricultural practices. Also, closer link with modern retail can result to higher farm gate prices for smallholders. If we go to the next slide, so what's the way forward? I think there is a need to promote increased vegetable consumption, and this can be done through promoting home gardening, urban agriculture, and even school vegetable gardens. Also, new and creative ways of cooking vegetables, to make eating vegetables more attractive to children. Fast food chains and ties to include vegetables in their menu, and also partnership with retailers, supermarket chains to feature health benefits of vegetables. If we go to the next slide, there is a need to improve profitability, and this can be done through use of quality seeds of improved varieties and sustainable crop production, protection, and post-harvest technologies. Next slide, please. There is also a need to modernize the supply chain. Good post-harvest handling and storage is very important, of course, to reduce wastage. Reducing the layers of traditional supply chain, direct contractual arrangements between farmers and retailers would help a lot in making it more profitable for farmers. Getting farmers organized to form marketing clusters. And there is a need for more investment in the supply chain. Next slide, please. Now, these are just a sample of a success. I have two success stories to show how we have helped smallholders. They used to be really small, but now they have transitioned to commercial smallholders. This is a farmer in one of the provinces in the Philippines. He started growing vegetables in 1990. He used to be a tricycle driver. Now he plants 25 hectares of land to vegetables. He earns like $78,000 a year on hybrid bitter gourd and also on hybrid tomato. He exclusively plants hybrid varieties, and he employs at least 200 individuals from the community each cropping season, because we know that, farming is quite intensive, so we can generate employment. We have here a simple cost and return analysis. If you look at the main inputs, labor make the most of it, and seeds is only actually 5% of the total production cost. And if we go to the next slide, we see here the cost and return analysis with several scenarios, a low price, maybe during the main season, an average price, and a high price. So this is what we teach the farmers. It's better to produce vegetables off season when, especially tomatoes, when prices are high. So with a low price, you see that the net income is low, but with a medium and with a high price, then the farmer can really make, a good profit out of tomato farming. And then just the next slide, very briefly, this is also another farmer, a woman farmer from the southern part of the Philippines, from Mindanao. And she used to be an overseas worker, but then she wanted to spend more time with the family. She came back, to the Philippines and was encouraged to go into vegetable farming. And now she employed modern farming technologies and was even given an award as a farmer scientist by the Department of Agriculture. And she was able to send all her children to school through vegetable farming. So that ends my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Very, very interesting. And again, it shows that it can be done. I will open for questions. We are going to try to end these 5 minutes before 9. I want to apologize, Mary, to you and to everyone that is connected. We have to adjust the time, but we have a town hall in the institution, and we are all asked to go. And who at least will participate. I have a question before I open that perhaps you can address together with the others. I'm curious on what do you think would it take for some of the big seed companies to do what we are seeing that can be done by East West Seed? Why aren't the big seed producers doing exactly the same? And Marianne, if you tell us, how can you make this profitable from a business point of view, provided that you are also working on the extension and on the training of farmers that will include your costs and enhance your costs? Why this is still more profitable to you as instead of doing other types of seed provisions, and why this is happening? So I'm leaving my 2 questions with you. We have around 20 people. If anyone that is connected wants to ask a question, please send us through the chat box your request to ask a question. I will take 1 or 2 questions from the floor, and then I will go to people that are connected. So please think about that. Any questions here? Yes. If you want to introduce yourself, then we can ask a question. Go to them.
Yeah, hi. My name's Chris Brett. I'm the lead agribusiness specialist here at the bank. I just want to ask Marianne, I mean, with all the experience you've had, there's a lot of push at the moment on biofortification of seeds. Is that also within your plans to biofortify seeds going forward? That's one question. The second question is to Ida. Is there any difference in the pricing at the market, the pricing of the seeds to smallholders between the multinationals and the more local seed suppliers? Is there a difference in the price of seeds?
Okay, I hope you take notes. If you want us to repeat, we can come back. Any other question from here? Yes.
Yeah, I'm David Kisselquist. I'm a consultant with the bank. I'd like to call your attention to the Enabling the Business of Agriculture recommendations for variety introduction. Let's say call for a DUS and BCU test and government approval. And I was wondering if there's some ideas of how that might impact.
Okay, let me go back to you. We have 5 questions, and I will take some other questions. Who wants to start? Ida, do I get to you? Do I go to you?
Is that me? I think the first question was, what does it take for other companies to do the same as East West Seed is doing? What we like is that we see that every company is seeing what they can do. I showed this example of Sakata from Japan, and they say, well, we are just starting, so let's start by testing our available varieties for suitability for the West African market. And the next step could be to set up distribution. But they also say capacity building, training, such as East West is doing, that's not part of our business model. So every company chooses their own strategy. And maybe related to the push for biofortification, that's one strategy to improve nutrition, but that's a strategy that relates to field crops or beans, sweet potato, or rice. I don't see it happening in vegetable seed, but maybe Marianne has other strategies. And difference in pricing. Marianne showed that price is just a small component of the business model of smallholder farmers. So price is most of the time not the issue. Size of packages is. So you see some companies providing smaller packages, which makes it less expensive for farmers, or they don't have to share it with other farmers in the village. There are other strategies to improve affordability, for instance, by providing insurance or by providing loans. And we see companies rather choose those strategies than lowering their price.
Marianne?
Probably she has muted herself.
Marianne, are you there? You are in mute.
Yeah, okay, yeah. On the question of is it still profitable for a seed business, like we are spending a lot on extension, knowledge transfer, definitely if our business model is centered on smallholder farmers, they are our clients and we need to meet their needs. And as I said, knowledge transfer activities in fact form the foundation for future sales. If we teach them the proper way of vegetable farming and let them and show them through our field days and demonstration plots, the advantages of using high quality seeds, improved varieties, and good agronomic practices, then we gain their trust, we gain the trust of the farmers, and that will be, just increased business for a seed company. So knowledge transfer activities are also the foundation for future sales of the company. Now on the, Ido mentioned something about biofortification, but I think vegetables are really excellent sources of micronutrients. Even without biofortification, they are natural sources of micronutrients. But I think also some of the breeding goals would actually lead now into the nutraceutical aspects of plant breeding. So yeah, I think that would be one aspect that plant breeding should address. And then, as Ido said, pricing in the market, like for East of a Seed, like we have a small pouch which cost $1, which is really affordable. And I think even the other seed companies would have similar pricing for that pouch.
Okay, David, I'm not sure you got your answer for your question. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more?
Well, let's see. A couple of months ago, I was talking to some seed companies in Africa, and they can get their varieties into any country without having to go through government approvals of the variety performance or anything, except Ethiopia. And one company was saying that they got 2 varieties in after a couple of years of tests, and it cost $5,000. So this is the other countries around the world, like India, doesn't worry. You can introduce varieties when you're ready. Bangladesh, it's automatic. The United States, it's easy. But yet the EBA is recommending, without specifying, what crops or whatever.
You have to explain what EBA is, because not everyone will know what we do in EBA.
This is the guidelines for policy for agriculture that the World Bank is preparing, enabling the business of agriculture. And there's a lot of investment in the bank in presenting this. But the recommendation for seeds is that all varieties should have a test for DUS and test for performance. And if we have those recommendations out there, I'm afraid it would actually turn the vegetable business completely, just strangle it in Africa. So it puts the bank in a bad situation, or anybody who wants to work with the bank in a bad situation. I'm just wondering what...
So what's the question for them? Because that's a discussion that we can have inside of the bank. What is the question for?
The question they were talking about working with small farmers. We breed for small farmers and so If the government gets in and says, no, we have to approve the varieties, what will that do for introducing vegetable varieties into Africa?
Okay, so the question is perhaps more for Ido for the index, no? Do you think that there's going to be an impact on farmers adopting seeds if there's a regulation from the government that really says we need a process of approval and stamping of varieties that come from outside of the country before they are planted in this country? I leave that question with you, and I go to the people that are connected to see if anyone has any questions.
Well, thank you for this important question. I think this would indeed have an immediate impact on availability of seeds. As I mentioned, you can grow the available seeds in a fast track by just testing and making the seeds that are already available in the market. But if you introduce testing by governments, that will just take more time. And if they can't get it right for corn, why introduce it for vegetables? You talk about many varieties and many crops, so that will introduce bureaucracy that will only take more time for those varieties before they can introduce to the market. If you don't do it in the USA, you don't do it in Europe, and you don't do it in other countries, why introduce it in Africa? So I wonder if this is the right recommendation that the World Bank should give.
The way in which recommended, but that's another story. Okay, we're not going to get into that now because that's an issue that we have a lot of discussion. Let me get into people that want to.
Also,
Yes, Mary.
Yeah, let me just briefly share the experience with the Philippines. I think we in the enabling business for agriculture. I think Philippines rank as also in the top position, at least for as far as variety registration is concerned, and also regulation. What is important is a very good partnership between the private sector and government. For example, like the Philippine Seed Industry Association, we sit in the board of the National Seed Industry Council, which approves varieties for registration. So what is important is really a very good communication and partnership between the private seed companies and government, because it worked at least in a country like the Philippines. That's what I wanted to share.
Thank you very much, Mary. Now, anyone that is connected has a question or a comment at this time? We can't hear anyone, so perhaps you need to unmute. Sorry?
Otherwise, I have to.
Okay, I will come back here, but I just want to give an opportunity for colleagues that are connected. We can't hear anyone, so you need to unmute if you have a question. Okay, so you can post it, you can send it to the box and we will read it for you. Okay, let me go around here. I know that there are more questions here. Weichner, we had some questions.
Yeah, I was interested also to two questions actually. One is about the urban markets. Obviously, there's a rapidly increasing interest in urban markets and urban food supply. And in our previous Food for All talk, Luis Fresco clearly indicated that carbohydrates are going to be land-based produced. We're not going to produce wheat, maize, and rice in cities. But for vegetables, that's is potentially a different story. Can be much more easily be grown either hydroponic or non-hydroponic in urban areas, and on small areas with profitable models. So what do urban markets as production areas mean for the companies? And would it also mean something for the index? So that is one question I had. And the second question is that it seems to me a little bit there's some geographic concentration of seed companies operating in these more formal markets. I'm thinking, at least in Africa. I think about Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa probably. But in all these markets, your market share is still in the single digits because most of seeds are traded between farmers on local markets, farmer-saved seeds, and so on. So what can we expect in the next 5 to 10 years from seed companies? Will they be focusing on deepening their market penetration where they already have made a start, or can we also expect companies to expand to the orphan countries? Like I'm thinking about West Africa has been mentioned, DRC, Central Africa. So where are we going for that in that sense? And then again, would that mean something for the World Bank? No? Should the World Bank focus more on the orphan countries?
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else here? Yes, Melissa.
Yes, I have a follow-up question. My name is Melissa Brown, and I work in Southern Africa, and we have some regional projects in Africa which are trying to promote collaboration around the introduction of new technologies. And one of the challenges is how do you introduce these new technologies? So maybe as a follow-up to this last question is, what is, from their perspective, particularly from East-West Seed, what are the main constraints to entry into new markets and new countries? Is it policy? Is it knowledge about what the market is? Is it the availability of breeders? As I mentioned in some of the presentations, what are the top 2 or 3 constraints that they see to entering these new markets?
Perfect. Brief one, last one.
In one
Melissa,
of the
you have to introduce yourself.
Oh, hi. Yes, I'm Melissa Williams. I'm a senior rural development specialist. I'm working in South Asia, specifically in Pakistan. And we're also trying to introduce, we're doing a smaller scale nutrition project introducing kitchen gardening right now. Now, in one of the presentations it mentioned that the seed companies aren't focusing on nutritional content because that's not demanded by the consumer. And it's already been discussed that vegetables are nutritious. So, but one of the things that I am wondering is, do we know the impact on nutritional value of the seeds that happens through plant breeding and creating hybrid seeds for, climate adaptation and for other things? I've read in some places that there is an impact on the actual nutritional value of some of these varieties. Do you know anything about that? And is the breeding actually negatively impacting nutritional value?
Okay. Mary, let me go back to you first, and then I will go to Ido. Mary?
Yes. First, sorry, the question on constraints in Africa. So for the coming years, it's part of our strategic plan to actually increase our presence in Africa, especially West Africa. But some of the constraints, I think, are the level of knowledge of the market would have to be addressed, and also the distribution network, I think, is also one of the constraints. But we are now fielding also more technology transfer specialists to really look at the market, and also testing varieties that have worked for other tropical areas. So that's what we have planned for Africa. Now on the, you talked about, you said nutritional value. I didn't quite understand the question, but you mentioned something about does plant breeding in fact have a negative impact on the nutritional value? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it is, at least as far as we are concerned. This was it. In fact, one of the breeding goals is still, in fact, trying to develop varieties with higher content, higher nutraceutical content. It's quite. We are not yet there, but it's still part of the efforts of the company.
Okay. Ido, do we go to you now?
Yes, about the geographic concentration, we see indeed that a lot of companies start in one country, for instance in Kenya, and then move to other countries. And it's just step by step. Many companies are just starting. And they also say, well, we have started in East Africa, so just don't be impatient. We'll get to West Africa when we get there. What would help is regional harmonization. Because, well, maybe this is not such an issue for the big multinational companies, but we were surprised that we didn't find many Indian companies active in Africa, because the step from India to Africa seems smaller when you have varieties that work in a tropical region than, for instance, from Europe to Africa. We don't see many Indian companies yet active in Africa, and they tell us because it's a patchwork of small markets. So it would help them if there's regional harmonization, so it's easier to enter a larger market, and then also what you call orphan markets will follow. There is an issue though with Congo. We haven't found any company active in Congo, and that has to do with the security situation and government policies.
So I think, Wagner, your questions were not covered yet.
One on the urban market, isn't also from Marianne, maybe?
Yes.
Is the
urban?
Yeah.
Yes, you are right. In fact, we are also now penetrating what we call the urban market. So we are promoting home gardening, like training, even teaching container gardening, not hydroponics, but also container gardening, converting, dealing a lot with village associations in converting, empty lots into communal gardens, and making, the seeds really available to home gardeners. And even so, that's what it's really now and a trend. And we are not doing this alone, but we are partnering a lot also with non-government organizations and even government in promoting this urban agriculture or home gardening.
Thank you very much. I would like to close this session with some reflections on our side, and I would like to give a final minute to you, Marianne, and to Ido to leave something behind for us. I think that when we do this food talk series, always for me is what do I take from here, and how do I do my job differently, and what can I do better when I talk to our clients. And it always surprises me because the solutions are always simple, and it doesn't take very much to do them. What we have heard here is there is a way to promote a much more diverse market of vegetable seeds in many of the clients that we have. And normally what it takes is just a small incentive in one of our operations or in one of our engagements so that can happen. Facilitating policies, promoting some help to some companies to arrive there, providing training and technology that is not just for the big staples, but for a more diversified production. All are these things that can be incorporated in anything that we do every single day. So I hope that we can all leave these talks with a reflection on what can I do differently in the things that are my direct responsibility to make this happen more. We are agents of change in the bank, and I always think that we have an incredible opportunity to live a better world by the things that we do every day. So I want to leave that with us in the bank. And I want to go back to you, Marianne, and to Ido, so that we hear some final suggestions from you on what do you think that we can do in the bank to link more the production of a more diversified seed market, particularly in vegetables, through what we do in the bank. What do you want to leave with us? I will go to Marianne first and to Ido second, and then we'll close the session. Just a couple of one minute each. Marianne.
Yeah, thank you, Ethel. Well, I think First, I think the study that the World Bank is doing on enabling business in agriculture, that is already one eye-opener. In fact, when I got the report and I talked with the Minister of Agriculture and showed him how the Philippines really perform well, then he was really more encouraged and said he promised to do more, for the seed sector. That's one. But in my talk, I think the bank would be able to intervene, so make some perhaps be involved in projects that would help also provide some incentives to the other stakeholders, in the whole value chain. So looking at it all from the value chain approach, I mentioned about modernizing supply chain, and even just simple promoting increased vegetable consumption in countries where really the vegetable consumption is very low. I think in this sense, a very strong, I mentioned public-private partnership and even inclusive business models would make a difference. That's it for me.
Well, we work together with the team of EBA, and because we see it's extremely relevant that we get a better picture of the state of the enabling environment, but also what's happening on the ground. And you hear a lot of percentages, for instance, of informal seed and formal seed, which is very general, but we need more specific information on specific crops, field crops and vegetables, what's available already in the market. So you can base your actions on real data, and there's a huge data gap. And another, I would like to underline again, data is important, enabling environment is important, but in the end you also need people on the ground doing the work. Many seed companies have a lot of problems finding the agronomists and breeders that they need to do the work. So if the World Bank can do some more or advise on education, I think that would be welcomed.
Thank you very much. I think this was a great start of the day. Hopefully the day finishes with us in the same high note as we started it. I want to thank very much again our two presenters, Ido and Marianne. Thank you very, very much for sharing your time with us. And I want to particularly thank Weichner on my right, because he is the architect behind all these talks that we are doing and have started some months ago. So thank you, everyone. Hope you have a good rest of the day, and let's think how we can move this forward. Thank you very much again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.